All right, let's go. The controls are in front of the other controls. Wait, play.
No worries.
There you go. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
Okay, so this might be an unorthodox talk. I'll do my best. Just like DAOs, sometimes you set out to do something, sometimes something else happens. And so why do you do what you do, right? How much what you do informs who you are in the end of the day, right? Are you who you are because of what you do, or you do what you do because of who you are? It's a process of being and becoming, right? There's a little fractal. There's an engine of state, venture, state, venture, state, venture, right? Their intention, right? Sometimes you're affirming an idea, and sometimes you're building a new idea, and there's a process of abandonment and catching yourself. So, like taking a step is a succession of a mini fall and you catch yourself, and a mini fall and you catch yourself. So the being happens because there is a imagination state of believing on a result, right? The tension of being and becoming has a temporal dynamic to it. So most of my work happens around reflections around polarities, and I think this is the mother polarity. I've been searching my entire life. This is an invitation to prove me wrong and find a larger polarity than this one, a more encompassing polarity than this one. But I think this one is my big bad mama so far after 10 years of looking at this, because as you manifest identity, it's a trade-off that you close off relational possibilities, and as you open yourself to relational possibilities infinitely, you will lose any sense of manifestation of identity. And they have this generative tension where the spice of life comes from, I guess, right? The process of holding on or giving in flow. So one keeps our attention from the other. Is it time to affirm or to inquire? Is it time to sustain or to venture? The muscle of attention is making this decision all the time. And reward systems, they lay the tracks in the process of being and becoming, both for individuals and communities. And that's the size of the responsibility that's there on what to give to whom, how much, what to track, what's important, what matters. This defining this success narrative is a chicken and egg problem happening over time. So chicken and egg is not enough. It's chicken and egg and time and egg and chicken and egg and time and chicken and egg and chicken, right? Because you are something because of what was done by you, but not only you, and you're becoming through imaginations of what can be done next by you, but also not only you. There's a matroska of systems within systems within systems, all inter-affecting each other, creating mind-numbing cybernetic possibilities. And sometimes it's okay to allow your mind to be numbed by those possibilities and imagine yourself through them, right? So what? Wait. And okay, so the next verb that we need to venture out together into this imaginal possibilities of being and becoming is the sense of belonging, right? Because the notion of separation, that what formed you because of what you've done is short-sighted. You are formed by so much more, and you're venturing into the future with many other people that you are in state of coordination, collaboration, and cooperation with, and we will define these three better as we move along. So when together, whether you want it or not, we happened, right? This one is not optional, right? There's no such thing as absolute separation or effective loneliness. Actually, maybe the idea of the individual might be a little bit fictional. So are we more different than same, or more same than different? I'm not sure this has an answer, but sometimes you have to figure it out, especially when you're making decisions on who gets what, who goes where, who gets a chance to do this. We're basically designing rings of privilege. We're constantly designing VIP areas, and I've never seen a VIP area destroy itself from the inside. So as you close off something, as you create a gate, there's a lot of responsibility in that moment. So the question I have is, can you define the we that came into your mind when I asked the last question about the we? Can you hold it softly in your hand somehow? Which we was the first we that came up? And what's the second and what's the third one, right? So how many we's are you a part of right now? Like, just let it run. Let the algorithm run in your head, and then try to list all your we's real quick, right? Can be daunting. But also you have to ask yourself, so as I'm trying to decide which we I want to focus on and which we I'm talking about when manifesting togetherness, how inclusive does that we want to be? This is not a trick question. Inclusive is not necessarily better. It's just a question, right? And when measuring your presence in that we, what are the parameters that informed your, there's a mistake there, I should change. What are the parameters that informed your process of being and becoming? Where did they come from, right? When you allow yourself to let go from the illusion of separation, the belief of individuality, and really try to embrace everything that happened before you had a you to you, what were all the other we's that were there historically, right? This is a uncomfortable exercise. People pay people weekly to sit down and talk about this. And maybe we should do it together in community, but that's, I'm going to really try not to make any, how to say, prescriptions on this talk. It's just questions, really. So what aspects of it do you or we want to move with us or you into the future, right? When you're building reward systems, you're selecting patterns of we, some to stay in the past and some to move into the future in this process of being and becoming. These questions, they don't have a right answer, but and because they're also non-quantifiable, sometimes we forget to ask them, right? It's so seductive to be able to get data on stuff, and the more semantically rich our interactions become at the point of inception with like Telegram, Discord, Collabland, wallets, metaverse, like a wallet moving through space. You can dust that wallet constantly, you can track those actions, etc. There's so much we can learn about the user and their interests, etc. But these are second order cybernetic systems that as they grow, the lessons that we just had become less than relevant at each temporal unit moving forward because the system is redefining, right? So we need to do the job. You guys do the job of creating benchmarks, and it's a unsung hero challenge, I guess, in my opinion, because we're always going to need contextual navigation. So I'm trying to provide the questions I ask myself when deep in this contextual navigation, because I knew there would be genius people in this call, in this how to say, the gathering, assemblage. And I was like, okay, so I'm gonna really allow myself to be the stupidest person in the room and just like come from my very community organizer block party perspective. So this is, people have seen me saying this before all over the place. Like I call it the 30-second organizational design course. What is the minimum that everybody gets for being part of the system? What is the price, pledge, or sacrifice, or the cost of having access to that system? And what is the process of having gone through that membrane, right? And this is my navigational device. Whenever I'm looking at a system, I know what I like and what I don't like. I wouldn't say that it should be the same for everybody, but these questions will remain the issue number, like my first sensational approach, and really sit alone in silence and figure this out, because reward systems are basically defining success for the individual within that organization and selecting, right, behaviors and patterns. And I get completely absorbed by this subject. because they are the success narratives and what it means to have a life well spent. Like if you were expecting me to come tell you what a life well spent is in this talk, I'm sorry, I will be thoroughly disappointed. But I just want us to be completely aware that this is the most political action anyone can take, right? Is how you have fun, what makes you like your definition of happiness and a life well lived, or so you can substitute happiness here for any word that is too big to have true meaning, and like justice, love, happiness, peace, all these the big misnomers that were always used throughout history to commit the most heinous crimes, right? This is where the danger lies here, and it can't just be about numbers, because what makes people look at you as successful will become their next heuristics for action, and they create Schelling. I don't even have to finish the word, right? Just Schelling. You're just Schelling pointed your way to the word point. So we it's so much information that we need these shortcuts, and these shortcuts form faster than anything else. So if you want to change society, if somehow narratively you can touch what the perceived vision of success is, everybody else just reorganizes really fast, right? But nobody has the key of that story alone, because successes have flavors, right? Some people might like a more oozy caramel-like success. I myself like a more crunchy kind of success. Most often, I like biting onto things than just licking the candy. Like, there's always that discussion, or you always have to decide when you get a mint put in your head, or you're gonna in your mouth. Are you gonna bite it, or are you gonna just let it dissolve? There's flavor to success. There's different styles, and the reward systems we're all designing, either consciously or unconsciously, and we're participating in just by being in Web3 in general, or all the other choices we make, or where to spend our time, where to live the tension of being and becoming. They invite us to become aware of the imaginary victories in our heads, right? Why are you here, not somewhere else? What is the imagination process behind that decision? And how can we design consciously these communities by trying to become empathetic to this banquets of imaginary victories that are feeding the engine of the collaborators you have and the ones that you want, right? I know it's kind of fuzzy, but this is going to be the fuzziest talk I've ever given, because there's no solution for this. You have to stay with the trouble. You're going to always have to sit and reflect, right? Okay, so let's get a little more practical on these reflections. And I don't even know how long the talk is. It was really improvised. And then we can just open the floor and talk about it, which is more cool than listening to me speak stuff. But I tried to put really cool emojis, like how much work went into selecting the right emoji for each slide. It's not even a joke, right? But so please at least make sure that the success strategies match the spoken values of the organization, right? This is my first red flag giver in that little 30-second organizational design or analysis course. And it's not only about the payroll or who gets what, but the events, the offsites, the style, the aesthetics of the celebrations of that organization. These are all part of it. Things to think about, because the opinions and manifestos, they matter way less than how you reward the weakest member of the membrane. Right, so whoever is getting the least, what do they get, and how do they get rewarded, and what's the level of psychological safety that they feel? This is sort of the question number one that I ask when I get into a bar. I have a whole thing that I say when I get into a bar. If the most attractive or cool people there are getting paid to be there, I tend to leave. Just throwing that out there. And this is especially hard for DAOs, because imagine if you're trying to judge the bar, but the bar doesn't have walls, and the bar sort of overlaps with another bar. And then there's this quantum capacity of a person to be really important in both bars, but they can't be both. Like it's hard to say where a DAO starts, where the other one ends. And we are literally, for example, in Prime, we're trying to build the mechanics for these overlaps to be signified and quantified and practicalized. But right now it's just a challenge to the imagination, really. And the other question in these systems, especially with DAOs, which there's always this problem with talent mining and keeping people interested and having predictability of contribution and throughput and all these things. Like usually the founders are more effed than everybody else, because they're not like everybody who's at the fringe is allowed to change their minds. They're allowed to go away. And then if the founder is really allowed to change their mind and nobody else is, then we inverted the pyramid. We are back to the corporation, right? Last time I worked a normal job, basically, I couldn't change my mind. My CEO could change their mind all the time. And I was basically an instrument at the service of this. And I'm not saying this is wrong and shouldn't happen. But so the question is, who's allowed to change their mind and who's allowed to fail? These are navigational devices that are important when designing community, joint ventures, collaborations in general, okay? So Kia posted the other day that DAOs are, somebody's calling me. This is totally not okay. Sorry. I have to go forward with, yeah. So Kia posted the other day that DAOs are egregores. And egregores are an important term in my life because I like these topics and stuff like this. And I disagree that DAOs are egregores. Egregores are like mind animals, thought forms that manifest when people get together to do something together, when there's shared intent, shared interest, etc. So you can imagine that this like imaginary animal that is hungry and you have to feed it with your attention and your intent. And the people who summoned it, the people who started the whole thing, it's like this hungry mind animal has more access to the people who started it than to the people who came afterwards. So just to keep a community going, staying at the same place without growing too much, you have to spend energy. And there's this community Sisyphos action, right? And the tensions that I've seen in the DAO space often caused by like founder community conflict that we watch like every 3 months. We just watch some version of this dilemma happening. They have something to do with the entropic tendencies of human groups to deaggregate or to lose its intentional purpose. And then a founder or a group of founders or the OGs or whatever it is, trying to anchor that entropy, right? That sense against the entropy. So this is still that polarity that we looked in the beginning. It's identity and relationship, it's being and becoming. Again, not suggesting anything, just asking questions. I just want to give you questions to go forward in your head, right? Is this okay for everybody still? Does anybody have questions or something?
It's amazing, Felipe. Look at the chat. People are freaking out.
I can't look at the chat because I can't open the thing. And then, yeah. So I will do later. Okay, so I want to introduce you guys because I'm not a scientist and I didn't go to college, but I am trained in a thing called Gitcoin phenomenology. And that's what brought me to Germany and that's what brought me to DAOs, right? And there's a term in that realm of knowledge called the exact sensorial imagination, right? Which is the capacity of giving yourself within the system and going through the social process in a fifth dimensional way, where you try to imagine what can happen from here, but you are the sensing instrument. So the idea is that imagination itself is a perception organ. It's not fiction. The fantasy is a sensing mechanics. And I deeply believe that this is important. You don't have to be an artist to do this. And one way to stop the linear flow mind from getting in the way of fantasy is to allow the knowledge building process and the sensing process to happen as natural senses happen, which is color, texture, rhythm, right? Because you don't read you sense a song, you don't analyze a song, right? And we need these two capacities. And I felt that my social function in this particular group would be to affirm this, but I'm not saying that this is better than the other, just before I get shot. And then I want to introduce a concept of wholeness, right? And that takes us back to the we conundrum. Which we are we talking about? Like, who put the membrane on a thing, right? I don't have an answer for that, but as you allow yourself to just try to escape all the membranes with your exact sensorial imagination, just let it grow, 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 grow. We need to deal with this sensation of wholeness, right? when the system is formed, when the parts create a whole, it's diverse yet coherent. It's not same, but so we try to make it legible. We want the data. We try to organize. Like I'm right now in the Netherlands. If you ever flew over the Netherlands, you know the problem of legibility, right? But I don't think that's going to be easy to do with DAOs, or else we're just going to end up with a bunch of companies in the blockchain. And even if we do, there will be also the other type of DAOs, right? So the more our operators, designers, token economists, and et cetera, become comfortable with navigating wholeness and uncertainty in wholeness through a process of sensing and context, more than just data. So you have sensing and context with data. I think we'll be better off. And I think we're close to the end, right? Okay, so we touched this, that is it my DAO, your DAO, where the DAO starts, where the other DAO begins? Like Bitcoin itself is the mother of all DAOs, in my opinion. It's just DAOs. And the we conundrum, right? I really like this spider emoji. I could look at it all day. So there is no spoon, right? There's no spoon, right? There's only peopling together. But unless someone shoves a spoon in your eye, and then there's definitely a spoon, and it hurts, and collaboration is painful sometimes, you know? So it's really easy for some person on Zoom to sit here and say, oh, there's no spoon. No, there's definitely a spoon sometimes. And I've cried at night because of proposals and DAOs, okay? I was the first person in the world who paid all my bills by proposing to DAOs because of a bunch of coincidences, but it's actually something that happened. Genesis saved my life because I was unable to earn money doing my profession in Germany, right? And because look at what my profession is. It's this weird shit. It's like, who's gonna, you know? Show me your CV. I don't have one. Sorry, you know? So I just, as a last ditch effort, I want to just define these three words because they get very confused and used several times. If nothing was linear in this presentation so far, this is linear. It's a linear scale of intimacy, coordination, cooperation, collaboration. If we can actually have this as a agreed upon standard, I would love for watching this to happen. So coordination happens even if we're not looking at each other, right? It's the Schelling point thing. It's having coordinated action without communication. It's incentives, game theoretical orchestration that can be set afoot on purpose, but it's definitely happening multi-purpose, which we call accident all the time, right? And then cooperation is kind of like when somebody watches all the talks from this assemblage, there will be a higher understanding that will be formed, but I didn't coordinate with Milwaukee that we would be maybe Angela was the secret orchestrator of this design, but in any way, and there's my little brick, and there's Milwaukee's brick, and there's Angela's brick, and there's Vivia's brick, and there's David's brick, because like, for example, Dog here, when he smiles and I say something, he's making presentation better. He's my cybernetic device, right? In many places. David has no idea how important he is, and now he closed his camera, leaving me completely alone in the dark. So, and then collaboration, which is the thing that hurts the most, is when we make the brick together. And there's a real danger there that the result of the collaboration will be the smallest of both our minds, right? The collaboration mode can create a result that is a bit worse than what we could have done each alone, you know? And if you've ever been married, you know that there's at least 1 week that this happened, like the whole, you know? Collaborating is hard and painful. It's a contact sport. It might cause some hurt, but it also might manifest the most beautiful things that a human can experience. Demands a lot of respect and deference, and definitely learning all the neuroplasticity of crypto and game theory, etc., has helped me immensely in navigating my personal life because of all of this. And okay, so this is important when designing reward systems more than anything else. How can we have healthy coordination, healthy cooperation, minimize collaboration, and when collaboration actually happens, that it's at least joyful, right? Optimizing intimacy. Okay, so I ended up making a suggestion. Right? So when you look at reality, it actually looks like this. It's really hard to put into little systems. So I hope that the wise sequence of asking questions and staying with the trouble helps us get from this being to the next becoming. And that's my talk. Sorry for the rambling.
Yay! Felipe, thank you so much for your talk. I guess maybe we have comments.
I haven't seen
or
anything.
Questions. Yeah, take a look at the chat.
Yeah. Am I over time?
No, not at all. So this is why we can take some questions. Switch on your mic, guys.
Yeah, just go shoot, or not even questions. Just tell me what you're thinking about. Like,
I love my favorite quote is on the success narratives as a catalyst. This is really cool. Because actually, I mean, it feels so obvious that reward systems are incentives, and according to game theory, they will lead to certain outcomes and you can make people do stuff. But in DAOs, as you laid out so nicely, this is different.
So Peter Hacker, is your name actually Hacker? That's really cool to be actually called Peter Hacker. Like,
it is indeed.
What an advantage.
Meant to be.
So the field is, it's like Goethe, the German philosopher, or actually not a philosopher. He was a playwright, but a statesman, but a collector of rocks, but a scientist, but a color theorist, but a drawer and a painter. He was the last of the Renaissance man. And he created a whole new approach to science that went completely ignored. If you want to go have your mind blown, just do this. Just Google Goethe's purple ray and watch the breakdown of why we have pure rays of light and we have pure rays of shadow. If you get to the end and still feel okay, call me, and then we can talk about pure rays of shadow, because it's one of my favorite subjects. But yeah, so Goethe he had this whole thing, and it didn't make sense at the time in 21 because he was approaching chaos mathematics from a sensorial direction, and his contemporaries were like, "Fuck this! We want more cotton. We want steam. We want vapor. We want machines that do things fast." What? Did everybody disappear?
No, it's just I switched on the camera so that we can see all the people in the call.
Oh, okay, cool. And then so let me go to gallery mode. And so and then people in this century kind of re-grabbed this thinking of Goethe and this approach to nature that is looking at process rather than product. And that's called Goethean phenomenology, and there's one important book called The Wholeness of Nature, which is really long. Just saying, because if you are a Kindle person like me and you just start reading, it will take a few months. It's like 1,500 pages or something, but it's beautiful. And yes, okay, that's the name of the field. Sorry, more questions?
Mark has one, I guess.
Yeah, thank you, and brilliant presentation. But I just wanted to ask, because my understanding is you have some background in Disco and the distributed cooperatives, and so and also you've given sort of a German flavor. So I also was thinking around the German Verein structure and how you have these you sort of the nonprofit and the for-profit and social benefit membership associations effectively. And so in thinking around that, which was also well thought out from legal engineers that were trying to also give organizational structure with some flexibility for these human activities to sort of coordinate themselves. I wanted your thoughts on how from the Disco perspective that you're familiar with, how you see that distinction, if you were to make sort of these clear structured distinctions on how these should be established, because they take the view, at least in looking at that, it's more of this sort of for-profit, and then you have to think about what is the nonprofit entity structure. Is it still a DAO? Is it a Disco? Is it something else? Should we leave all of these things undefined? Is that the better approach? So I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. Over.
When I see people getting super excited about taxonomy, I go have tea in the other room, but I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I think my camera froze. Right? Like somebody has to do taxonomy. It ain't gonna be me. And if I can help in a workshop, I can sustain the workshop. It's Yeah, the word should makes me uncomfortable. Try something. It's so new. Looking for benchmarks will just create outsized power to early adopters that actually know not very much more than you. Just do something. Let it fail. Let shit fail. It's fine, in my opinion.
All right. We could discuss this, I guess, for another hour. Thank you so much, Felipe, for sharing your thoughts. And make sure to share the slides with us. Many people asked in the chat. So let's make sure we'll distribute it widely.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Felipe. And now,
I will apologize as well, because I'm in the Netherlands. I have to go move my sack of atoms through time and space, but I will watch all the recordings later. And thanks, guys, for having me. Okay.
Thanks for being here, Felipe.